Questions continue to swirl around the brutal death of a young woman in a South Loop condo building in October. Her autopsy results are still pending. No charges have been filed in connection with her death, and police have not named any suspects. Caitlin Tracey was found dead at the bottom of a stairwell nearly 6 weeks ago after falling more than 20 floors.
Now, we know that's where her tragic story ends, but it begins on the other side of the lake in Michigan. Our Casey Cronus traveled to New Buffalo, where Tracey owned a home, and talked to her neighbors. Casey joining us in studio with more on what they are sharing.
That's right, John and Scott. And the women you hear from say Caitlin Tracey went back and forth between Chicago and Michigan. Her neighbors say she seemingly had it all together, but share with us that in recent months they saw signs of trouble.
Great personality, very friendly, funny, sarcastic, very comfortable in her own skin.
On a quiet street in the Michigan beach town of New Buffalo, neighbors say a vibrant young woman moved in during the pandemic.
Like a lot of people from Chicago came this way to get away from the city during that time.
Joyce Lance has lived on the block for more than a decade, while Bunny Coyner moved to the neighborhood about a year ago. Both of them say they got to know Caitlin Tracey, or CT as they called her, as a friendly and kind neighbor.
I would consider her a neighbor. I would consider her a friend, someone that, we would always say hello to. They came to, graduation parties at our house.
Very bubbly, very personable. Again, just willing to talk and chat and say, hey, we should have a glass of wine together sometime. And she knew a lot of the neighbors. She would visit with the neighbors. She would walk down to the lake.
They also say Caitlin, at separate times, gave them a tour of her home.
It was beautifully decorated. You could tell that she loved to cook and she loved wines and walked us through some of the things that were in her kitchen. And so I guess my first impression of her was that I was duly impressed.
But now the house is quiet. A rug that her neighbors say she washed late in the summer still hangs over the second floor balcony. They tell us it was one of the last weekends Caitlin spent at the home.
You can't go by that house without feeling sick to your stomach that she's no longer here. She really enjoyed it up here. She really, really did. And I felt very bad for her that she was afraid to be here.
Coyner and Lance tell us Caitlin described being in a tumultuous marriage, particularly a disturbing incident in August.
She said, I felt like he was going to kill me.
Before hearing their recollection of an alleged domestic disturbance at Caitlin's home in August, we want to take you back to January. A felony complaint we obtained at the Berrien County Courthouse states that officers responded to her home and, quote, observed Tracey had cuts on her lips and other red markings, unquote. The complaint goes on to say that Caitlin told them her husband, Adam Beckerink, quote, had assaulted her and stolen some of her items, unquote. The documents add that Beckerink allegedly told Caitlin to tell officers her call to 911 was accidental. We've requested information from Berrien County officials on the status of that case and are awaiting a response.
In her words, he had cut her off from her friends and from her family, and even explained that she was no longer working. It felt very much the way she was describing it to me, and you were there, I think, at the time, that she was very isolated.
The neighbors say Caitlin traveled back and forth between her home and Beckerink's South Loop condo in the same building where she was found dead in a stairwell. In August, the women tell us they had one of their last encounters with Caitlin. It was the night Coyner took this video of police responding to Caitlin's house. We contacted the Berrien County Sheriff's Office, who sent us this mugshot from the incident. It's of 46-year-old Adam Beckerink, Caitlin's husband. Court documents state Beckerink was charged with 4 counts, including domestic violence and resisting and obstructing from that August 19th incident. We've requested details from the Berrien County Courthouse on the status of that case, but have not yet received any information about where the charges stand today.
After they took Adam away in handcuffs, I sent Caitlin, or CT, a text message, and I said, are you okay? Do you need me to come down? I'm used to seeing her as somebody that's very independent and somebody that can just handle things on her own. And I was surprised when she said, yes, can you come down?
Coiner says she also went over to check on Caitlin.
CT was wrapped in a shawl and she was crying and she was shaken.
Inside Caitlin's home, Lance and Coiner say Caitlin painted a troubling picture.
She said to me that they were down at our small little grocery store down the street, and she said, I have no idea what I said, but I must have said something that upset him. They got home and he was mad and he was angry, and she said, I let him know that I'm locking the doors and I'm not letting you in until you can, take a deep breath. Apparently then he went around to the sunroom in the back of the house and came in. She tried to run and get away from him, and she describes hiding underneath the dining room table. She described him pulling her out by her hair. She described at some point during all of this grabbing her phone and calling 911.
We've submitted a FOIA request for the 911 call and body camera footage from that night, but have not yet received a response. 10 days later, the women each received this text.
CT sent this on August 29th at 1:07 p.m. Bunny and Joyce, thank you for being fabulous neighbors. Your support and space has meant the world to me.
I've been to court twice since you were last over, and yesterday was tough, but moving forward and have a great advocate in the prosecutor's office. Now it's time for me to rebuild and move forward with a calmer and healthier life and future relationships.
We now know 2 months later, Caitlin would be found dead in the South Loop. We've made several attempts to reach Adam Beckering's attorney, asking for comment. Once again, no charges have been filed against him or anyone else in connection to Caitlin Tracey's death. Her autopsy results are still pending. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, we have a list of resources on our website. Just click this story.